The sleek Zephyrian survey ship, Void Seeker, drifted silently through the outer reaches of the Sol system, its metallic hull gleaming under the distant sun's pale light. Commander Kael'thas stood before the massive viewscreen, his 4 eyes scanning the data streams flowing across holographic displays. The bridge hummed with quiet efficiency as his crew worked at their stations, tentacles dancing over control surfaces with practiced precision. "Another dead system," muttered Lieutenant Zixra from the sensor station, her crystalline voice carrying a note of disappointment. No subspace communications, no quantum signatures, no orbital installations. The third planet shows signs of ancient civilization, but it's been dark for millennia. Kael'thas nodded, making notes on his personal datapad. The Confederation had been expanding rapidly across this spiral arm of the galaxy, cataloging systems and claiming resources. Dead worlds were common enough, but this particular system had once shown promise according to their long-range probes. Now it was just another entry in their ever-growing database of lifeless rocks. "Take us closer to the third planet," he ordered. "I want a full spectral analysis. The Xenoarchaeology Division will want detailed scans of any ruins." As the Void Seeker adjusted course toward the blue-green world, its sensors painted a picture of desolation. No satellites orbited the planet. No ships moved between the worlds. Even the electromagnetic spectrum was eerily quiet, showing only natural radiation from the star and cosmic background noise. The planet's surface showed large urban centers, but they appeared abandoned, overgrown with vegetation. "Fascinating," whispered Dr. Velnara, the expedition's chief xenoarchaeologist, as she studied the incoming data. "Look at these structures. Advanced materials, complex geometries. This species achieved significant technological development before their extinction." What the Zephyrians couldn't see was the network of quantum sensors hidden throughout the system, disguised as space debris and inactive asteroids. Each one transmitted encrypted data through channels that bypassed conventional detection entirely. Deep beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean, 11 kilometers below the surface in a reinforced facility carved from the seafloor itself, Admiral Jackson Rivers watched the alien ships approach with cold calculation. The Terran Defense Command Center was a marvel of human engineering and paranoia. Constructed over decades after humanity's first devastating encounter with alien aggressors, it represented everything the species had learned about survival in a hostile galaxy. The main operational chamber stretched the length of 3 football fields, filled with holographic displays showing every corner of the solar system in real time. "Zephyrian Confederation vessel confirmed," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres from her station. "Standard survey configuration, minimal weapons. Package. They're following predictable scanning patterns." Rivers nodded, his weathered face showing no emotion. At 68, he had spent his entire adult life preparing for this moment. The scar running down his left cheek served as a permanent reminder of humanity's first contact with the Confederation 40 years earlier, when a human research vessel had stumbled into their territory and barely escaped with news of the expanding alien empire. "Signal strength on the stealth network?" he asked. "All nodes responding normally," came the reply from the communications officer. "We're invisible to their scans. The Faraday shrouds are holding perfectly." Across the solar system, humanity's true strength lay hidden in plain sight. What appeared to be ordinary asteroids in the belt were actually massive battleships, their hulls covered in adaptive metamaterials that made them indistinguishable from space rock. Ancient Kuiper belt objects concealed fighter squadrons in cryogenic sleep. Even Luna's familiar face hid weapon emplacements that could crack a moon in half. The sleeping Armada had been humanity's greatest secret for 4 decades. Every major government had contributed resources, technology, and personnel to the project. Brilliant minds had solved impossible problems: how to hide fusion reactors from thermal detection, how to maintain life support systems in complete electromagnetic silence, how to keep thousands of crew members in suspended animation while remaining ready for instant activation. Captain Elena Vasquez floated in her command pod aboard the disguised asteroid Phantom Rock, her body held in perfect stasis by the medical systems. Around her, 300 crew members slept the dreamless sleep of the prepared, while automated systems monitored their vital signs and maintained the ship's invisibility. The vessel's fusion core ran at barely 1% power, just enough to maintain essential systems while producing no detectable signature. Similar scenes played out across the system. Destroyer squadrons hidden inside hollowed-out comets. Cruiser formations disguised as planetary ring debris. The massive dreadnought Silent Thunder masqueraded as a derelict space station in the asteroid belt, its hull scarred and weathered to perfection by decades of careful preparation. Back on the Zephyrian ship, the survey continued. Their instruments detected no signs of current life, no hidden installations, no threats of any kind. To their sophisticated sensors, Sol appeared to be exactly what it seemed. A dead system with a planet whose inhabitants had destroyed themselves long ago. Preliminary report ready for transmission, announced Zixra. Recommend classification as Resource Zone Gamma. Minimal strategic value suitable for future mining operations. Kael'thas approved the report with a gesture, unaware that every word was being intercepted and analyzed by human intelligence officers. In the depths of Earth's ocean, Admiral Rivers allowed himself the smallest of smiles. The trap was set. Humanity had learned patience the hard way, and now that patience was about to pay off. 3 months after the initial survey, the Zephyrian industrial fleet arrived in the Sol system like a swarm of mechanical locusts. Massive cargo haulers the size of small cities drifted toward Mars, their hulls bristling with mining equipment and atmospheric processors. Commander Kael'thas had been promoted and reassigned, replaced by Fleet Admiral Kextar, a veteran of dozens of resource extraction operations across Confederation space. Begin Phase 1 terraforming operations on the 4th planet, Kextar commanded from the bridge of his flagship, Dominion's Edge. Deploy atmospheric conversion units. I want breathable air within 6 standard cycles. The mining ships moved with practiced efficiency, releasing clouds of nanobots that began converting the Martian atmosphere. Drilling platforms descended toward the planet's surface, their massive bore heads ready to extract precious metals from the core. On Europa, ice-breaking vessels cracked through the frozen shell, preparing to harvest the moon's water reserves for the fleet's needs. What the Zephyrians didn't realize was that every action triggered sensors humanity had placed throughout the system decades earlier. The moment the first mining laser touched Martian soil, alarms began screaming in the Terran Defense Command Center. Admiral Rivers stood before the main tactical display, watching red warning lights cascade across the holographic map. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the activation console. 40 years of preparation had led to this moment. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Torres said quietly, "they've crossed the red line. Mining operations have begun on Mars. Europa ice extraction is starting." Rivers closed his eyes for a moment, remembering the faces of everyone who had died in humanity's first encounter with the Confederation. The research ship Endeavour had been destroyed with all hands, but not before transmitting crucial intelligence about alien capabilities and intentions. Those deaths had saved the human race by teaching them what they were up against. "Initiate Lazarus Protocol," he said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the decision. "Authorization code Omega-77 Alpha. All stations confirm." Around the command center, officers began entering verification codes at their stations. One by one, green lights appeared on the activation board. When the final confirmation came through, Rivers placed his palm on the biometric scanner and spoke the words that would change everything. "Execute Lazarus Protocol. Wake the fleet." The quantum transmission burst outward from Earth at the speed of light, carrying encrypted activation codes to every hidden installation in the solar system. The signals were designed to be undetectable to alien sensors, using quantum entanglement principles that the Confederation had never mastered. In Seo, the asteroid belt, what appeared to be an ordinary chunk of rock suddenly split apart like a blooming flower. The phantom rock revealed its true nature as adaptive camouflage peeled away from its hull, exposing the sleek lines of a heavy cruiser. Emergency lights blazed to life as the ship's fusion core ramped up to full power. Captain Elena Vasquez, gasped as the cryogenic systems released her from stasis. Her body ached from the rapid awakening process, but training took over immediately. Around her, crew members were emerging from their sleep pods, moving with the practiced efficiency of people who had drilled for this moment countless times. "Battle stations," she ordered, her voice hoarse but clear. "All hands to combat positions, this is not a drill." Across the system, similar scenes played out on hundreds of vessels. The asteroid field came alive with ships that had been sleeping for decades. Destroyers and frigates emerged from hollowed-out rocks. The massive battleship Silent Thunder shed its disguise as a derelict space station, its weapon systems powering up with an ominous hum. On Luna's dark side, the surface itself began to move. What had appeared to be natural crater formations for 40 years suddenly revealed themselves as masterfully crafted camouflage. Massive railgun batteries rose from concealed positions, their electromagnetic accelerators charging with crackling energy. These weapons could fire projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, capable of punching through any known armor. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes watched from the lunar command bunker as his artillery crews took their positions. The railguns were humanity's answer to superior alien technology. They might not have energy shields or faster-than-light communications, but they had learned to turn physics itself into a weapon. "Target acquisition complete," reported his fire control officer. "All batteries loaded and ready." The Zephyrian fleet continued their operations, completely unaware of the awakening happening around them. Their sensors detected some unusual energy readings, but nothing that suggested immediate danger. Admiral Kextar was reviewing mining reports when his sensor officer finally noticed something disturbing. "Sir," the officer said hesitantly, "I'm detecting multiple energy signatures throughout the system. They appear to be artificial in origin." Kextar looked up from his reports, his four eyes narrowing. "Explain." "Fusion reactors, electromagnetic fields, quantum fluctuations. It's as if the entire asteroid belt just came alive." Before the Admiral could respond, his communications officer interrupted with urgent news. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the third planet, the Dead World." The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Rivers sitting in his command chair 11 kilometers beneath Earth's ocean. His face was calm, but his eyes held the cold determination of someone who had waited decades for this moment. "Zephyrian fleet," Rivers said, his voice carrying across space with crystal clarity. "You are in violation of Terran space. You have 30 seconds to cease all operations and withdraw from the system. This is your only warning." Admiral Kextar stared at the screen in disbelief. "Impossible. Our scans showed no life signs, no technology. This world is dead." Rivers smiled grimly. "We got better at hiding." 29 seconds. Across the solar system, humanity's sleeping armada completed its awakening. Weapon systems came online. Targeting computers locked onto Zephyrian vessels. The trap that had been 40 years in the making was finally ready to spring. The countdown reached 0, and the galaxy was about to learn why you should never underestimate humanity's capacity for patience and revenge. The first attack came without warning. One moment, Admiral Kextar was staring at the impossible transmission from the supposedly dead world, and the next, his flagship's hull was screaming as railgun projectiles tore through the outer armor plating. The impact sent shockwaves through the massive vessel, throwing crew members across the bridge. "Where did that come from?" Kextar roared, his forearms gripping the command console as emergency klaxons wailed throughout the ship. "Unknown, sir," his sensor officer replied, panic creeping into his crystalline voice. "Projectiles came from the direction of the natural satellite, but I'm detecting no hostile vessels in that area." On Luna's hidden side, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes watched his railgun batteries cycle through their reload sequence with mechanical precision. The electromagnetic accelerators had fired tungsten rods at 12% of light speed, and the kinetic energy alone was devastating even to Confederation armor. "Target destroyed their primary sensor array," reported his gunnery sergeant. "They're flying half-blind now," Hayes nodded grimly. "Batteries 2 through 6 acquire new targets, fire at will." Across the solar system, the human fleet began their carefully orchestrated assault. Captain Vasquez brought the phantom rock out of the asteroid belt like a predator emerging from tall grass. Her ship's adaptive camouflage shifted and flowed, making it appear as nothing more than a piece of cosmic debris until the moment she opened fire. Plasma bolts erupted from her hidden weapon ports, striking a Zephyrian mining vessel with surgical precision. The alien ship's shields flared and died under the unexpected assault, its hull breaching in 3 places as atmosphere vented into space. Ghost 1 to Ghost Leader, Vasquez reported over the encrypted channel. Primary target neutralized. Moving to secondary position, the phantom rock immediately activated its quantum distortion field, bending light around its hull until it vanished from both visual and sensor detection. To the confused Zephyrians, it was as if the ship had simply ceased to exist. Commander Veltar, newly arrived with the 3rd Fleet reinforcements, watched in growing horror as his supposedly superior forces were picked apart by an invisible enemy. His battle cruiser, Stellar Dominance, had been designed to face fleets in open combat, not hunt phantoms that appeared and disappeared at will. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost contact with Mining Vessel 7 and Industrial. Platform 3. Sensors show massive hull breaches but no enemy ships in the vicinity." Veltar's tentacles writhed in frustration. The Confederation had conquered dozens of star systems using overwhelming firepower and superior technology. They had never faced an enemy that refused to engage in proper fleet combat. "Deploy sensor. Drones," he ordered. "Full spectrum analysis. These humans must have some weakness we can exploit." What Veltar didn't realize was that humanity had been studying Confederation technology for 40 years, reverse engineering captured equipment, and preparing countermeasures for every system. When his sensor drones spread out across the battlefield, they immediately fell victim to human cyber warfare specialists. Lieutenant Commander Chen sat in her cyber warfare center deep beneath the Pacific, her fingers dancing across quantum keyboards as she infiltrated the Zephyrian networks. The aliens had never encountered Earth's adaptive AI systems, and their security protocols were decades behind human innovation. "I'm in their tactical network," she reported to Admiral Rivers. "Uploading ghost protocols now." Veltar watched in disbelief as his sensor displays began showing false readings. Phantom ships appeared on his screens, then vanished. Real threats were masked as sensor ghosts. His own drones turned against his fleet, broadcasting targeting data to the hidden human vessels. "Systems compromised," his technical officer announced. "The humans have infiltrated our networks. They're feeding us false information." But the worst was yet to come. Captain Rodriguez, commanding the massive dreadnought Silent Thunder, had positioned his ship near a cluster of asteroids that humanity had been quietly nudging into new orbits for months. With precision that spoke of years of planning, he activated hidden gravity manipulators that sent the Space Orcs hurtling toward the Zephyrian fleet. "Incoming asteroids," screamed Veltar's navigator. "Multiple objects, high velocity, impact, in 30 seconds. The Zephyrian point defense systems opened fire, but the asteroids were too numerous and too fast. Several struck mining vessels directly, crushing their hulls like tin cans. Others created debris fields that made maneuvering impossible for the massive alien ships. As if the kinetic bombardment wasn't enough, the humans demonstrated their most terrifying capability yet. Deep space monitoring stations that had been watching solar activity for decades suddenly activated arrays of magnetic field generators. The equipment that had been sold to alien observers as research installations revealed their true purpose as they began manipulating solar plasma. A massive solar flare, artificially guided and focused by human technology, erupted from the sun's surface. The directed stream of charged particles struck 2 Zephyrian capital ships, overloading their electronics and leaving them drifting helplessly in space. Veltar could only watch as his fleet was systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to control the very forces of nature. His ships were being hit by weapons that shouldn't exist, attacked by vessels that appeared from nowhere and betrayed by their own technology. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Admiral." Rivers appeared on the screen again, his expression unchanged from their first encounter. Behind him, tactical displays showed the positions of every Zephyrian vessel, proving that humanity could see everything despite their supposed technological inferiority. "Commander Veltar," Rivers said calmly, "you're fighting a war we've been preparing for since before you were spawned. Every move you make we planned for decades ago. Every weapon you carry we've already developed countermeasures for. Every ship in your fleet is exactly where we want it to be." Veltar felt something he had never experienced before in his military career. Pure, overwhelming fear. Not fear of death, but fear of an enemy that had turned warfare itself into an art form. The humans weren't just winning. They were demonstrating that the Zephyrian Confederation had been outclassed from the moment they entered the Sol system. Commander Veltar's remaining ships turned and ran. What had started as a routine resource extraction operation had become a nightmare beyond his worst fears. Of his original fleet of 47 vessels, only 18 remained functional, and most of those were heavily damaged. "Maximum acceleration," he ordered his helmsman, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. "Plot a course for the hyperspace jump point. We need to warn the Confederation about what we've found here." His surviving captains were already forming up in a desperate escape formation, their ships limping toward the edge of the solar system, where they could safely engage their faster-than-light drives. Behind them, the mysterious human fleet seemed to have vanished again, leaving only wreckage and the bitter taste of defeat. But Admiral Rivers had anticipated this moment 40 years ago, in the frozen darkness of the Oort cloud, beyond the reach of conventional sensors. Humanity's final surprise waited in silence. Captain Isabella Cross commanded a squadron of 12 stealth corvettes, each one no larger than a Zephyrian shuttle but packed with enough firepower to cripple a cruiser. Her ships had been drifting in the outer system for months, their crews in rotating shifts of cryogenic sleep to conserve resources. "Ghost Squadron, this is Reaper 1, she transmitted on the encrypted channel. "Lazarus protocol is active. Begin intercept maneuvers." The corvettes came alive like hunting wolves catching a scent. Their fusion drives ignited with brief, controlled burns that accelerated them toward carefully calculated intercept points. Each ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, built for speed and stealth above all else. Veltar's sensor officer was the first to detect them. "Sir, I'm reading multiple contacts emerging from the outer system. Small, fast-moving vessels on intercept courses." The commander felt his hope drain away as the tactical display updated. The human ships were positioned perfectly to cut off every escape route. Somehow they had predicted exactly where the Zephyrian survivors would run and prepared accordingly. "How is this possible?" he whispered, staring at the screen. "Our intelligence said this species was primitive, barely capable of interplanetary travel." Captain Cross's corvette, Shadowhawk, streaked past a fleeing Zephyrian destroyer, its weapons, systems locked and loaded. The alien ship was 3 times her size, but size meant nothing when you couldn't see your enemy coming. "Target acquired," reported her weapons officer. "Firing solution locked." The Shadowhawk unleashed a barrage of smart missiles, each one programmed with adaptive targeting algorithms that could adjust their course mid-flight. The Zephyrian destroyer's point defense systems tried to respond, but the missiles were designed to exploit weaknesses in Confederation technology that humanity had spent decades studying. Explosions bloomed along the destroyer's hull as the missiles found their marks. The alien ship's shields collapsed and secondary detonations tore through its internal systems. Within moments, another Zephyrian vessel was drifting dead in space. Across the outer system, similar scenes played out as the human corvette systematically hunted down the fleeing aliens. The Zephyrians tried to fight back, but their weapons couldn't lock onto targets that seemed to phase in and out of existence at will. Meanwhile, Captain Rodriguez aboard the massive dreadnought Silent Thunder was leading a different kind of hunt. His target was Veltar's flagship, the battlecruiser Stellar Dominance. The alien commander represented valuable intelligence, and Admiral Rivers wanted him taken alive if possible. "Sir, we have the enemy flagship on long-range sensors," reported his tactical officer. "They're trying to reach the hyperspace jump point, but their engines are damaged from the earlier engagement." Rodriguez studied the tactical display, calculating vectors and possibilities with the cold precision of a chess master. The stellar dominance was wounded, but still dangerous, and its crew would fight desperately to escape. All ships, this is Silent Thunder, he transmitted to his battle group. We take them alive if we can, but the mission comes first. They cannot be allowed to warn the Confederation about our capabilities. The chase lasted 3 hours. Veltar's ship limped through the outer system, using every trick in the Confederation tactical manual to evade pursuit. They jettisoned cargo to increase speed, deployed sensor decoys, and even tried to hide in the radiation shadow of a gas giant. But humanity had been mapping the Sol system's gravitational fields for centuries. Every asteroid, every planetary orbit, every hidden supply cache was exactly where human tacticians needed them to be. Rodriguez's ships used gravity assists and pre-positioned fuel depots to maintain their pursuit, slowly closing the distance despite the Zephyrians' head start. The final confrontation came near Neptune's orbit. Veltar's damaged engines finally gave out, leaving his ship drifting helplessly as the human fleet surrounded him. The Silent Thunder emerged from the shadow of a moon, like a leviathan rising from the depths, its weapons trained on the crippled, alien vessel. Zephyrian ship, this is Captain Rodriguez of the Terran Defense Force, came the transmission. Your vessel is disabled and surrounded. Surrender now, and your crew will be treated according to the laws of war. Veltar slumped in his command chair, finally accepting the inevitable. His remaining bridge crew looked to him for orders, but what orders could he give? They were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and completely at the mercy of an enemy they had gravely underestimated. Stand down, weapons, he ordered quietly. Prepare for boarding. As human marines in powered armor crossed from the Silent Thunder to the alien flagship, Veltar found himself face to face with Captain Rodriguez. The human officer was younger than he had expected, but his eyes held the weight of someone who had spent his entire life preparing for war. How? Veltar asked, his voice hoarse with exhaustion and defeat. How did your species achieve such technological advancement while maintaining the illusion of primitive development? Our surveys showed you had barely achieved spaceflight. Rodriguez smiled grimly as he activated his recording device. This conversation would be crucial intelligence for Admiral Rivers and the Defense Council. 43 years ago, Rodriguez began, a human research vessel encountered one of your Confederation fleets. They destroyed our ship, but not before we learned something important. The galaxy is full of predators, and the weak get consumed. He gestured toward the view screen, where the wreckage of the Zephyrian fleet drifted in the cold darkness of space. Your enemies taught us that lesson first. The hegemony found us before you did, and they showed us what happens to species that aren't prepared for contact. They gave us technology, knowledge, and most importantly, they taught us how to hide. Veltar's eyes widened as understanding dawned. The hegemony, but they're at war with the Confederation. You're allied with our greatest enemies. We're allied, Rodriguez corrected. We learned from them, but we chose our own path. Earth wasn't dead, Commander. It was sleeping, waiting, planning, and you just walked into a trap that took us 40 years to perfect. The truth hit Veltar like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't stumbled into galactic politics by accident. They had been recruited, trained, and positioned as the perfect ambush predator. The entire Sol system was a weapon pointed at the heart of Confederation expansion, and now it was too late to warn anyone. The silence that followed the destruction of the last Zephyrian escape pod was deafening. Admiral Rivers stood in the Terran Defense Command Center, watching the tactical displays show nothing but human vessels and debris. After 43 years of preparation, the trap had been sprung perfectly. Not a single alien ship had escaped to warn the Confederation. But now came the harder decision. Status report, Rivers ordered, his voice echoing through the command center. Lieutenant Commander Torres looked up from her station. All Zephyrian vessels destroyed or captured, sir. Ghost Squadron is conducting final sweeps of the outer system. No survivors detected. Captain Rodriguez's face appeared on the main screen, transmitted from the captured Zephyrian flagship. Admiral, we've secured their communication equipment and extracted their database. The intelligence is extensive. Rivers nodded slowly. The moment he had dreaded and anticipated for decades had finally arrived. Humanity could no longer hide behind the illusion of being a dead civilization. The question now was whether they would return to the shadows or step into the light. "Sir," Torres said quietly, "the Defense Council is requesting an immediate briefing. They want to know our next move." Rivers looked around the command center at the faces of the men and women who had dedicated their lives to this moment. Some were veterans of the original hegemony contact. Others were young officers who had been born into this secret war. All of them understood what was at stake. "Patch me through to the Global Defense Network," he ordered. "All stations, all ships, maximum encryption." Within minutes, the faces of humanity's secret leaders appeared on screens throughout the command center. Admiral Zhang from the Asian Defense Sector, General Okafor from the African Continental Command, Director Petrov from the European Space Initiative. These were the people who had kept humanity's greatest secret for nearly half a century. "The Zephyrian fleet has been eliminated," Rivers reported. "Complete tactical victory. 0 survivors." The relief on their faces was palpable, but Rivers could see the same question in all their eyes. What came next? "We have a choice to make," Rivers continued. "We can return to hiding, dismantle our fleets, and wait for the next Confederation survey in 50 years. Or," he paused, letting the weight of the alternative settle over them, "or we can stop hiding and start hunting." General Okafor leaned forward on his screen. "Admiral, are you suggesting we go on the offensive? The Confederation has thousands of worlds, millions of ships. We've won one battle, not the war." Rivers smiled grimly. "General, with respect, you're thinking like the old humanity, the species that was content to hide and hope for the best. But we're not alone anymore." He activated a holographic display showing star charts that had been hidden even from most of the Defense Council. 12 systems, each one marked with the same designation, Lazarus Protocol Active. For the past 20 years, we've been seeding dead systems throughout Confederation space. Systems just like Sol appeared to be. Each one contains a hidden human fleet supplied and maintained by our deep space operations. We've been building not just an armada, but an empire. The faces on the screen stared in shock. Even at their level of clearance, they hadn't known the full scope of humanity's expansion. Director Petrov found his voice first. "How many ships are we talking about, Admiral?" 12,000 combat vessels, 43,000 support ships, 300,000 personnel in cryogenic deployment across 67 systems. The Confederation thinks they're dealing with one dead world that got lucky. They have no idea what we've really built. Captain Rodriguez's transmission interrupted the briefing. "Admiral, we've cracked their command codes. Their communication array is fully operational. If we're going to send a message, now's the time." Rivers looked at the faces of humanity's leaders one final time. "The vote is yours. Do we return to hiding, or do we announce ourselves to the galaxy?" The vote was unanimous. Rivers moved to the captured Zephyrian communication console, where human technicians had interfaced their systems with alien technology. The quantum transmitter was capable of broadcasting across the entire Confederation network, reaching every world, every fleet, every outpost simultaneously. "Begin recording," Rivers ordered. The message that followed would change the course of galactic history. Rivers spoke calmly, his words carrying the weight of humanity's accumulated patience and rage. "Citizens of the Zephyrian Confederation, this is Admiral Rivers of the Terran Defense Force. For 43 years you have believed that Earth was dead. You were wrong. We were sleeping, learning, preparing. Today your fleet came to our home to strip mine our worlds and claim our resources. Today, your fleet died." The message included tactical recordings of the battle, showing Zephyrian ships being destroyed by weapons that appeared from nowhere. It showed the true scope of humanity's hidden armada, the stealth technology that had kept them invisible for decades, and the systematic dismantling of a force that had conquered dozens of star systems. "You cataloged our world as dead," Rivers continued. "You were partially correct. The old Earth is dead, the Earth that hid in fear and hoped to be left alone. What you face now is something new, something that learned from your enemies and chose to become something you've never encountered before. The message shifted to show star charts of the 12 other systems, each one suddenly blazing with the signatures of human fleets emerging from hiding. Ships that had been dormant for years activated their weapon systems and began moving toward Confederation space. Earth remembers every ship you destroyed, every world you conquered, every species you enslaved. Earth endures because we chose to become stronger than our fear. And now Earth is coming. The transmission ended with coordinates, not of Earth, but of the 12 other dead systems that were now revealing their true nature. Each one broadcasted the same message: we are here, we are ready, we are hunting. Across Confederation space, the message was received with growing horror. Fleet commanders who had spent decades conquering primitive worlds suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that had been planning their destruction for nearly half a century. Admirals who had never lost a battle stared at tactical data showing impossible human victories. In the Sol system, Admiral Rivers watched as his hidden fleets began emerging from their concealment. The asteroid belt came alive with ships. The Kuiper belt revealed massive supply depots. Even the sun itself was surrounded by solar collection arrays that had been disguised as research stations. Humanity was no longer hiding. They were revealing themselves as the apex predators they had always been destined to become. The galaxy had taught them that only the strong survive, and humanity had learned that lesson well. The hunt was about to begin, and the Confederation was about to learn why you should never underestimate a species that has spent centuries perfecting the art of war.